Negotiations in London, President Trump says the U.S. and China finally agreed to a trade deal. The only finishing touches approval from him and President Xi Jinping of China. Now, here's what we know right now. The U.S. is keeping 55% tariffs on China, while China is keeping 10% tariffs on the U.S. Trump also says Beijing will supply the U.S. with magnets and rare earth minerals. We, of course, have team coverage on the deal. CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi is standing by. But first, we want to get to CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly Oigetit. She is at the New York Stock Exchange for us. And Kelly, before we get to the newest, CPI report that we got today, a big news, as we mentioned earlier, on the international front. How significant is this trade deal, and how is the business world reacting?
So, excuse me, Mugo, I would say it's significant if this actually gets done. You know, as you alluded to, we still need approval from both President Xi and President Trump. Now, I imagine my colleague Olivia is going to do a much better job than I would of going through the very specifics, the nitty-gritty of the deal. But generally, markets are cautiously optimistic. Also, some playing in there that CPI report that you mentioned. I did talk to a number of investors, though, and sort of the headline was saying is, hey, we like the fact that the two sides talked. We like the fact that the two sides left the table with something tangible, but we have also been here before. We go back to 2018 to 2019, that trade war under the first Trump administration. We saw a number of moments like this where both sides did agree to something in person. Then once they returned to their respective countries, things started ratcheting up again. So it is significant, again, if it gets done, Mugo.
All right, Kelly, thank you. Stand by for us real quick. Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. Olivia, the president says the deal is subject to final approval with President Xi of China. Can you walk us through what we know so far about the details of this deal?
Sure, and as Kelly just stated, this is a deal and a framework that they've made. But of course, when they went back to their respective countries after that meeting in Geneva in May, this all kind of fell apart. So what we know right now is what the president posted on True Social this morning, which is that a deal is done. It's subject to final approval. But he said full magnets and any necessary rare earths will be supplied upfront by China. Likewise, the U.S. will provide China with what was agreed to. This is in regards to access to markets and engine access as well to certain plane engine parts that China had wanted access to. Trump also said this includes that Chinese students using colleges and universities will be able to still do that. In addition, the president said later that the U.S. tariffs will be set at 55%. Now, that is a 20% fentanyl tariff that was put on when Trump got into office. In addition, the 10% reciprocal tariff that he put on back in April and a 25% Section 301 tariff. Now, that had been put on during the first Trump administration and carried through the Biden administration and remaining on right now. So he said that the U.S. tariffs on China will stay at 55%. Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods will stay at about 10%. So we know some of the sticking points in this deal going into these talks in London was the topic of rare earth minerals and magnets. That's something that the U.S. wanted greater access to. They felt that the Chinese were slow rolling some of that U.S. access to those materials following that conversation in Geneva. We know then that the President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China spoke. And as a result of that, kind of opened the door for these conversations to happen and for them to clear up any conversation or any uncertainty as it relates to this framework. We know that Secretary Lutnick said they had to sort out the negativity first. So it seems that that is sorted and that the two countries are on the path to a deal, just waiting for that framework to be completely agreed upon.
All right, Olivia, thank you. Let's go back now to Kelly, because as we mentioned, that new consumer price index report, it came out today. What does it tell us about inflation? Should Americans be concerned?
So what it tells us is inflation has ticked back up slightly. That means that prices are still rising. They're just rising at a slightly faster rate. Now, that does follow 3 months where we saw the inflation rate come down. So it is significant that we did see a little bit of an uptick. Now, remember, 2.3% was that number that we saw in April. May saw 2.4%. We're getting further from the Fed's 2% target. We don't love that. However, we did expect it to go up a little bit higher. And I alluded to when we spoke just a moment ago that markets are also celebrating this fact. It's kind of a low expectations when things come in better than expected. Investors feel better. The monthly number too, I think is really something to focus in on. We only saw an increase of 0.1%. So what this tells us is that we are seeing some price pressure from the tariffs. And there are a few items, I think we've got a graphic that we can pull up where you can see that. Appliances actually saw an increase of almost a full percentage point in the month of May. Those are things that we're importing from other places. But we did see a number of items go down as well. Eggs, we always love to talk about eggs, down 2.7%. That is something that I love when I go and get them from the grocery store, because I'm a big eggs girl on Saturday. But generally, I think the headline here, we're seeing some upward pressure, but it's really going to be these next few months and whether these trade deals get done. Are we going to see the prices continue to go up and accelerate, or are we going to see some stabilization?
All right, we'll take this for now. Kelly Oigetit, thank you so much for your time today.